I'm just going to mute myself whilst we.
Okay.
What do you need?
I just wanted to say, because guys, I'm pretty sure that people are coming into the session now, which is amazing. So just before we start, I will say it again at the end, but just a massive thank you to Hugo, and a huge thank you to Kate, who's kind of sitting behind and hand holding me as we do this. And also a massive thanks to our brilliant speaker today, Tash. We'll come back to Tash in a few more minutes again. I just wanted to kind of just kind of give you a bit of an overview of kind of what we're trying to do today. So this is very, very innovative for the World Class Wednesday series. If you have taken the trouble to join us today, I appreciate it's not Teams and slightly more challenging to get involved. I think the combination of actually it's trying to think about the technology and trying to sort of show where the kind of like the direction of travel is really, particularly for these types of events. Absolutely amazing, because clearly we're sat around the world watching this event. And at the same time, it's lovely to be able to have a slightly more kind of real experience with you, which is lovely. So kind of a hybrid between kind of Teams and an instructor-led kind of like session with me and Tash. So usual kind of stuff that I would just go through. So I'll put some stuff on the screen. Hopefully that'll kind of work for me. So on the screen, you've got some information just around the some of the projects we have, the MOS piece, which is something really, really important.
Sorry to interrupt you for a minute. Can you just unmute your line again? Sorry.
I'm unmuted. Fantastic. So you can see some information there. You've obviously got the information around LinkedIn Learning. I would strongly encourage you to kind of get involved in that. If you're not currently playing LinkedIn Learning, we've seen about 80,000 views now of LinkedIn Learning and videos. So I'd really, again, strongly encourage you to get involved in that information. There's information obviously around our mission, our purpose and our values. Remember guys, our primary focus then is about bringing the world to Abu Dhabi in a sustainable way, and that's very, very important, and making sure that we're offering these unique experiences. I'm proud to say I think this is quite a unique experience today. We're speaking with a brilliant speaker. We met Tash for the first time during the sort of break between, end of year break, 27th of December. It was a bit of a last minute for me and Tash. We didn't really know what was going to happen, but we had a packed house in the auditorium, and Tash and I did a session with that group, which was widely acclaimed. It was an excellent session, which led me obviously then to invite Tash back into this session today, which I think is really, really, really important. Obviously, we're going to cover some of that content with you today. We'll, of course, post this recording into our skill zone, as you're very familiar. It's our 140-second session today. As usual, we'll wait a couple of more minutes just to let people come in, because we would normally start the world class a couple of minutes after the hour, which I think is really, really important. Once we've kind of done that, I'll have a quick introduction with Tash. I'll hand it over to Kate, who's going to just do a bit of a hands-on, just so you understand some of the functionality of the platform, of the tool that we're going to be using today as well. But as always, the most important thing for me, and I know definitely for Tash and also for Kate, is really just feel very free to ask us questions. We'd love your feedback on the tool as well. So please feel free to kind of say, what you kind of think about it. I have to say that when I first saw the tool, I was just kind of like staggered, because for me, it just made a massive opportunity. It looks like Richard's gone into the, I've got people coming in, going to the Teams event. I'll have to ignore that for the moment. I think we've tried pretty hard to give people instructions without the Teams event. So yeah, so it's, like I said, it's quite exciting for me today, our 140-second event. So we'll give it another sort of couple of minutes. I think we've got all 18 people. So guys, I'm incredibly, I'm stoked that you've managed to kind of like work out how it goes. We'd love to see your comments in the chat as well. So we'd love your questions as usual. I know you're very, very participative and interactive audience, usually with us in Teams. So we'd love to see your questions in the chat today. I'm obviously joined as well by the brilliant Alam, who is going to be monitoring that for you, and of course Tash. I think perhaps at this point then we'll go over to Kate. So Kate Parkin is basically running the show for us sort of back of house, and sort of like doing all the clever technical stuff that you can see in front of you. Most of you know who I am. So if I can just briefly hand over to you, Kate, perhaps you could talk about some of the functionality that we're experiencing.
Brilliant. Thank you there, Stotts. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome to Hugo and the Happiness Frequency. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Kate and I'll be overseeing the event today. As Stotts says, we have designed Hugo to be the next generation of virtual engagement experience, a complete solution for internal and external meetings and events. So it's my responsibility today to make sure you have a fantastic experience. And with that, I'm just going to share a few housekeeping hints and tips so you get the most out of today. So firstly, Hugo is all about engagement. So if you have not done so, please switch your camera on by clicking on the camera icon on the top panel. We would really like to see your faces as this event takes place. To avoid background noise, you have all been muted through the event. So don't worry if you notice your microphone has been muted, that is on purpose. If you would like to ask a question to Tash or to Stotts, please do raise your hand by using the raise hand icon, which is on the bottom right of your emojis that you can see on the bottom of the screen. I'll be coordinating the Q&A and we will try to get to everybody. You will receive a message from myself in the chat and advised when you'll be brought up on the screen, and you'll then be unmuted. So please, again, have your cameras on. Feel free to use the emojis along the bottom of the screen throughout today's session to share your thoughts on the content. Along the top as well, you can see a chat icon. It looks a bit like a speech bubble, which we encourage you to use to be part of the conversation. You can also, if you would prefer, use this to pose any questions in the Q&A tab. There'll also be polls today throughout the event, so you get to share your opinion. Click on the option that suits you and the results will be shared. Finally, if you do have any technical questions today or queries, please use the green chat feature in the bottom left of your screen. Fill in a few details and our support team will be ready to support you live. So that is it from myself. Please do enjoy today's session. And with that, I'll hand everything back to Stotts. Over to you, Stotts.
Kay, it's absolutely amazing. So thank you very much. And again, thank you so much for the incredible support you've been giving us over the last couple of days, and Hugo as well. We're obviously going to record the event and we'll obviously be sort of like promoting it because I think it's really, really important to do it. But it's just lovely to have such a sort of eager and willing audience. I know change is quite challenging for people and quite frustrating at the beginning, but what I wanted to do today was really just give you a glimpse of maybe the future, that kind of metaverse and how we're basically all working together. I'm very boring, as you know, so I'm going to basically introduce you to the brilliant Tash in a couple of seconds. As I mentioned, we were kind of like doing the build up to the session today. Tash and I met 27th of December, just before the end of the year. We ran a session in the auditorium. Absolutely fell in love with Tash that particular day. She's a phenomenal facilitator, very, very knowledgeable. There's a lot of work with kind of coaching and particularly coaching with horses as well, which is quite fascinating. And maybe she'll kind of like share some of that experience with you in the next few minutes. So let's let Tash just do a bit of an introduction. So good morning, Tash. Welcome to the World Class.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
I tell you what, it's just absolutely awesome. So perhaps you could start by just telling us a little bit about Tash Enriquez and where you kind of come from, your background.
Sure. So I've been happily living here in Abu Dhabi always for almost 15 years. My background is actually in sports science. So the first training I did was fitness management, and then I continued working as a personal trainer. I went into recreation management and set up my own company at some point and started working with New York University here in Abu Dhabi. I was a wellness specialist at that point. Started to develop more corporate specific programs supporting HR, the learning and development team there, which was a great experience. I was very, very fortunate to also set up a science lab at NYU. It still exists, so the Sports and Wellness Science Lab. I did my life coaching certification during that time as well. And the reason for that was that I was always very intrigued by an ability to create a deeper intrinsic motivation in my clients. So unfortunately, very often it was the case that as long as people paid good money for the services, they were all motivated and engaged. And the moment that wasn't given anymore or that wasn't needed anymore, unfortunately, the results often slowly but surely disappeared and the motivation disappeared. And so, yeah, I wanted to initially really just add the life coaching for that reason. But then what happened was that the more I was learning about the way our brain works and the way you know, we learn on a broader level how everything is related, you know, and we can absolutely use the same principles that we use in sports science and in training for brain training as well. And yeah, so this is where created coaching came from. So now I have my own business, Created Coaching. I have my own methodology, and created coaching always focuses on a very holistic and scientific approach to anything physical and mental health and well-being. So whether I work with horses or not, I always take care of the whole person. I enable and empower my clients to do the same and to really learn the basic principles that we need to have, that we need to know about to lead happier lives and to develop or to tap into our happiness frequency, which is what I'm going to be talking about today.
I'm tempted to take us off on a tangent, Tash, because we had a very, very beautiful conversation in my office about helping people to coach horses with these incredibly beautiful creatures in a paddock. And actually the horse, I'll never forget that conversation where the horse decides whether it wants to take the action, you know, and basically you can influence people with your, you know, just with your kind of almost your kind of aura and the way you're kind of interacting with it. And it's very hard to change a creature of such magnitude, such weight, such size, such power, which is amazing. So let's, before we do that, I'm going to get distracted because I'm fascinated by that conversation. Let's talk more about the happiness frequency. So where did the happiness frequency start?
So last year, and this is where I was invited to Etihad as well, as you mentioned before, I was assigned by MAN, the Office of Social Contribution here in Abu Dhabi, to develop a program that was more impactful and more sustainable in its impact than some of the more regular wellness interventions. So one of the issues that we face, that obviously, especially since the pandemic, we have a lot of issues when it comes to mental health and well-being, right? But a lot of the interventions happen on a very superficial level. So people are, I always say, be wellnessed. You know, you go into a spa, you relax, you partake in some sort of intervention, you go to sound healing. It's all nice, it's all relaxing, but then you go back out, and the problem is that your lifestyle is not conducive to your mental health. So if you're spending, you know, every day, every week, in a very stressful state, in a state that eventually will make you unhealthy and sick, mentally and physically, then you know that 1 hour intervention of relaxation is not going to do anything. So the idea with the happiness frequency was, again, to really encourage people to understand how intrinsically connected body and mind are, you know. And when I talk about this balanced state of body, I'm including the endocrine system, I'm including our gut bacteria. We'll talk a little bit later, hopefully, about the gut being the second brain and why that is the case. And the mind, of course, you know, how can we create a mindset that helps us to deal with all kinds of situations that we're going to be exposed to. So that was the beginning of the happiness frequency. And to bring it back a little bit to the horses, or to explain a little bit to the audience what I do. So one of the methodologies that I use is called horse-guided empowerment. And we coach humans with the help of horses. So the horses are our co-facilitators in sessions. When I say we, I talk about me and some colleagues that I have in Dubai. So we work together for the bigger corporate events, and of course we all deliver sessions on an individual basis as well. And the horses have a sense of our coherence. So coherence is basically this balanced state of mind, and we can measure that through something called the HRV, the heart rate variability. Again, I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. But the horses sense that. So I always say horses don't speak human, they only speak energy. So the moment we approach the paddock or we approach the horses, they immediately know who we are much better than we know ourselves, but they know that on an energetic level. They can sense the electromagnetic field that we have around that, and all of this is measurable. So the horses know if we're coherent, the horses know if we are actually in a state of balance, or if we're in a frazzled state of stress. And the horses will feedback that to us. And they're attracted to a coherent type of energy where we're balanced, but they also help us to get into the state. But before I keep talking about this, I would like to actually take it to the audience. So I'm talking a lot about interconnectedness between the body and the mind, how stress affects us, not only physically, but also mentally. So we do have a few poll questions. Kate, if we can have them up. And then I'd love for the audience to answer them. So the first one is, does stress affect your sleep? Nice and easy one. So think of all the different ways as well. Feel free to also comment in the chat box if you want to elaborate. So we only put yes or no up there, but of course there's many different ways. And we could also have asked the question the other way around. Does the way you sleep affect your stress? So just think about that. So we have 100%, right? Not surprisingly. Can we have the second question? Does stress affect your nutrition? So do you eat more? Do you eat less? Do you eat worse? Do you eat better when you're stressed?
It's definitely, I mean, for me, it's oh gosh, I mean, it's an absolute nightmare. And I try to, my wife actually is very good at this, Tash, because she kind of grabs me and she goes, "Don't go to the fridge, you know, put that down." She has certain, and I really love her for doing it, to be fair. So she's always like, she gives me the what I call the Paddington Bear hard stare. She's more tolerant on a Friday than she is on a Monday or a Tuesday, to be fair.
Yeah, and that's fine. You know, everything we do has to be in balance as well. So here we have 21% saying, no, that's amazing. And we have comments in the chat box as well, forgetting to eat and more junk food when stressed. And again, I could also ask the question the other way around. So does your nutrition, is your nutrition, the way you eat, a source of stress? Because for many people, knowing that they don't eat well is a source of stress as well, and actually doesn't help, you know, their how they feel about themselves. So there's a few different ways. So sweet treats, exactly. And I'm going to come to this treat thing as well. Sorry, I'm not having a specific goal, but I'm always very intrigued when we say I treat myself to something. Yeah, so we don't have a poll question for that, but maybe you can just, if you want to put your answer in the chat box. So who here treats themselves with food? Or maybe you have a thumbs up option as well. You can also do that. So something there. Yeah,
I definitely
thumbs up.
Yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, Tash, go on.
Yeah, because now if I ask you, is the reason you need a treat anyhow related to food? So what are we treating? So maybe here are a few options. I'm going to type one. Oh, am I typing?
I can't spell.
So,
but definitely reward, definitely for me. I tend to reward myself. I kind of convince myself I've had a bad day or a hard day or a successful day. So I then tend to have my bar of chocolate or my glass of something, which is a bit of a challenge.
For me, it's stress, you know, when I feel like, compensation to stress, someone is with me here. So, you know, when I feel like I'm really stressed and frazzled, and in my mind, I also get this like, oh, I need to treat myself, you know, I deserve this now because I've been working so hard, as a reward, as you're saying, putting you back on a positive track. But if you think about it, all the things that we're talking about, these are psychological issues or psychological symptoms. And then we're treating them with a physiological treat. And what would make so much more sense is when we actually look into, okay, why do I need a treat? So in my case, I'm stressed. So what would actually be a cure for the stress? Well, taking a break, relaxing, sitting in the garden, you know, taking a few deep breaths, allowing myself an extra day off, something like that. I mean, that would be an appropriate treat. But somehow along the line, we all developed an interesting relationship with food. Let me put it that way. Yeah. So we all have a lot of associations with food that come often from our childhood. And some would exercise to relieve from stress. Exactly. That would also be a good one. Coping mechanism. I love a long walk. Yeah, great. That's a good one for sure. Yeah, but it's that instant gratification, isn't it? So it's interesting how we need to look into the thought patterns that we have created for ourselves, and sometimes just take a good look at, why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we feel the need to do that? But anyway, sorry, I came off track a little bit. It's not as enjoyable, but it is actually effective. So it is actually a cure. I think we have a third poll question. There it is. What physical symptoms of stress do you experience the most? So we listed a few for you. Feel free to, again, put others into the chat board. So just put other maybe into the poll question. Headaches, yes. I think we have that. Yeah, that's C, muscle aches and headaches we have there. And depending on the situations, of course, leg spasms, circulation issues, maybe. Okay, so let's see what we got. So for most of us here, it seems muscle aches and headaches. And the second runner-up is feeling sick, dizzy, or fainting. So I'm going to come back to that one later when we talk about the gut a little bit more and the importance of a healthy gut bacteria and why this affects us. Thank you, Achlan. So the reason why I ask these poll questions is really just to bring you awareness to how interconnected our body and our minds really are. And the funny thing is that when we look into science, we have so much knowledge. This knowledge is available to us, and we know a lot of things intrinsically. So when I'm talking about the gut, for example, we have so many sayings that we use, having butterflies in our stomachs, gut wrenching, I have a gut feeling. We are still very much in tune of the importance and the interconnectedness of the body and the mind. But the thing is, because each science kind of just investigates one area of expertise at a time, we don't really think in a way where we really use the interconnectedness to our knowledge, because we can treat all kind of symptoms from so many different angles. And that's the beauty about stress as well. So the downside is, yes, stress, for example, affects us in a multitude of ways. Yeah, so we already spoke about it. It can have just physiological impacts, and can have psychological impacts. It can affect our lifestyle. But vice versa, we can also affect stress in just as many ways, meaning it allows us a variety of treatments for ourselves when we're feeling stressed, because you might not always be able to remove yourself from a stressful situation, and you might not always have to time or the mindset, the mind space rather, to work on your mindset right there and then in a situation. But then knowing that physiologically impacting stress will still give you great advantage and great benefit is really, really important. So we just need to become a little bit smarter and a little bit more in control of how we're dealing with stress and how we're living our lives. Yes.
It's quite hard though, isn't it? I mean, do you not think it's I'm trying to sort of gather my thoughts on this, because I suppose I know there's this big difference, isn't there? I mean, I have this silly model called knowing, doing, and being, right? So I think there's this huge difference between knowing. I know that these things are bad for me. I know that these types of foods are bad. I know that my stress is bad for me, and I'm kind of aware of that. But I think the big challenge that I have as a human is the doing stuff. Is trying to apply it, and it's so easy, isn't it? Perhaps I need to get a padlock on my fridge, because I just it's my what's the word I'm trying to say here? It's the mind is much more powerful than the brain. The mind is much more powerful than the heart. So kind of, I suppose in my heart, I kind of know that I want to do things, but my brain sort of like takes over and says, no, it doesn't matter about that. Don't worry. Go and get a Mars bar. Go and get go and open a glass of wine or whatever. And I think that's the challenge. How do we stop ourselves from? We know this stuff is good for us, but how do we stop ourselves from the temptation?
Yeah, you're asking exactly the right questions. I mean, and I think that's probably the big question on everyone's mind at the moment in the audience, right? So yeah, we know all of this. Now, how do we do it? Well, again, my number one tip is always to just be a little bit more aware and conscious about what we want to do. But before we do all of that, I think it's developing a mindset and an attitude of empowering ourselves and really trusting in our own abilities and trusting into the immense power that we have to actually change something. Because here's what many people tell themselves. It's like, oh, well, this little time, one time here, one time there, I'm going to have a cheat day there. I'm not going to exercise here. Oh, I'm okay with that, but it doesn't matter, right? Because it's just at one time. And then it keeps going over and over again. And we tend to normalize bad behaviors in our societies as well. Now, the thing is that unfortunately, as our lives have become so much more advanced and removed from our natural lifestyle, we need to add that extra level of awareness, because otherwise we're just going for a car crash, I'm sorry to say. Yeah, so we're now exposed to much more toxins than we used to be. Our bodies are exposed to much more toxins. We're in a permanently stressful environment. Our brains are constantly impacted by stimuli of all sorts of things. Yeah. So it's not as easy as to say, oh, well, I do this once in a while, because again, the lifestyles we're leading are just adding so much stress and adding so much tension, adding so much pressure onto our physiological and our mental system, that without that level of consciousness and without active decision making and active choices, our bodies can't cope. If you think about how our brains would have worked thousands of years ago, they're still the same brains, but the lives we lead have changed so dramatically. So now we need to teach ourselves to take a break. We need to teach ourselves to relax. We need to find these ways. And again, we need to take control. We need to be in charge, because now we're just reacting. We're reacting to the pressures around us. Yeah. Exactly. More sedentary lifestyles, more health issues, diabetes, exactly, social media. So normally when I do bigger sessions, I have other questions that I ask around, like, what's your worst sleep behavior, for example? What is it that you do to sabotage your own sleep? And so I'm saying this because somebody here was talking about social media. Lots of people admit that the last thing they do at night is to check social media. But another thing where it's quite interesting to analyze how our brains work is, if I ask you here, how many of you can not watch a movie without checking their phones in between? So you could just use the thumbs up. I don't know if we can erase the thumbs up from the last time. Sorry, not the best way of doing that. But yeah, just put it in the chat box. Sorry, I'm new to this as well. So how many would say they cannot watch a movie without checking their phones for WhatsApp messages, for emails? And then we get carried away. Yay, Vicky, that's amazing. I can if I put my phone away, but I actually have to put my phone away. If my phone is next to me, it's not going to happen. My hand will move there without me even feeling, even in gatherings. Yes. So when we are with other people, right? And that's because, again, we've trained our brains to multitask. We've trained our brains to always be active and to always be stressed. And now the funny thing is, talking about the happiness frequency, many of us actually drive on the stress hormones. So we've now become so addicted to the stress hormones that being calm and quiet feels very, very challenging. So, and that's an important thing to notice. So if you are someone who is always driving on that full on energy, and you have to do one thing after the other, you get bored easily, you feel maybe even unproductive when you're doing something at a slower pace, then that's you being very much addicted and just too used to the stress hormones that you're being exposed to all the time. So again, creating that happiness frequency means, first of all, really taking stock of where you are in your life. How much time in your life do you spend in a stressful state? How much time in your life is your brain actually able to rest? And of course, your body as well. How does your eating, your nutrition affect your stress levels? How does your sleep affect your stress levels? How does your movement affect your stress levels? So, by the way, I always talk about movement rather than exercise, because I always say not everybody has to exercise. It really depends on your goals. On your specific requirements, of course. So don't quote me in case of any specific health conditions. But nevertheless, everybody has to be moved. That's what our bodies were designed to do. But if somebody tells me I really hate going to the gym and I just want to, be active for the sake of being active and to be reasonably healthy, there's lots of different ways of movement that you can find that you might enjoy, that will fit into your lifestyle, and that are pleasurable for you, that might be even relaxing for you. Like riding a bike with your kids along the corniche or whatever. There's so many different things, playing in the park, throwing a frisbee in the park. But what do we do as adults? We go to the park with our kids and we sit down and we check our phones. And we get stressed over some emails, right? So it happens very easily. So instead of using time to actually be active and to be present, because again, we have taught ourselves to be in a completely different mindset, which is always doing, which is always acting, which is always wanting, needing to do something. And we like to feel needed as well, right? That's the other thing. So actually acknowledging that if we're not present and if we don't check our emails every single day, the world is not coming to an end, and work is probably just going to go ahead just as well, right? But we don't always want to acknowledge that.
You used an interesting word a moment ago, but just about the importance to be present. And I suppose I've got a really good. I completely understand what you mean. I think sometimes we're definitely with audiences that I work with, they really struggle with the concept of being present. Perhaps we could elaborate a little bit more on being present, what it means and why it's important.
Yeah. So being present is the opposite to what I was just describing of always being frazzled in our mind. So being present means to be able to focus on one thing, which is the current moment, with all our senses. So to smell, to taste, to touch, to hear, to listen, and to not get distracted from what's going on. That's really the essence of being present. And when we're present, we are coherent. So let me explain coherence a little bit more. So coherence is when our physical and mental state reflects the actual reality. So for example, many of us have developed a lot of different programs. And Khaled, a lot of what I'm saying will hopefully give a bit of an answer, but I'll come back to you as well. I'm seeing your comments. So many of us have developed a lot of programs. I'm going to give you an example. If you wake up every single day and the first thing you think is, oh no, I don't want to get up, I'm still tired. That becomes a program. And you might find yourself thinking this every single moment without actually having checked in with yourself if you are actually tired, because you might actually not be tired in that moment. So that would be being present. Being present would be to actually take the time to be like, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling good. Great. Let me take this forward. But if you move through your life and you have these certain thoughts that appear all the time, then these become programs. And your body will create the emotions around it. And your emotions will then signal to the body how you're feeling about it. Yeah, so they become physical emotions, physical feelings as well. I'll give you another example. You need your coffee to get up in the morning. Okay. Even the language that we use is like, I need my coffee. I cannot live without coffee. You're making yourself dependent on a cup of coffee. If you would choose your language and go like, I decide or I choose to have a cup of coffee, it changes everything. Yeah. So that's a present decision. Do I need this cup of coffee or do I want this cup of coffee? Oh, you know what? Right now, it would be nice to have a cup of coffee. I feel like having this cup of coffee. And then I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to smell it. I'm going to taste it. I'm going to be present with my cup of coffee. So that would be taking a little mini break rather than stressing through it, right? So again, coherence is that that state of
I was just going
mind.
to say, Tash, has anyone seen the? I was going to say, Tash, has anyone seen the Ally McBeal? I'm not sure whether probably too old for this audience, but there's a brilliant Ally McBeal clip where she's teaching a fellow lawyer how to enjoy the first cup of coffee of the day.
Ooh.
I might download it and share. I'm not sure whether you've seen it before, Tash. I'm gonna send you a copy of it. It's slightly inappropriate, but it is brilliant. So as you said that, I've just got this image about Ally McBeal basically drinking her first cup of coffee of the day. Anyway, I digress. I do apologise.
I
for
have
the
to admit,
interruption.
I really hated Ally McBeal. I did find her so annoying. And I haven't thought about her for like ever since you just mentioned her. But I
Oh
like
no, I'm
that
so
idea
sorry.
of
I've
being
destroyed your week.
taught how to drink that cup of coffee. And I do that a lot, you know. So when we talk about mindfulness, so Khaled, I'm coming back to your question. How can we overcome these kind of situations? Well, the thing is, we actually don't want to overcome them when we're in that situation, because that's a pretty tough exercise to do. So what we want to do is teach ourselves to be more relaxed and to be more present and to be more coherent in situations where we're not already experiencing the full meltdown situation, right? So a good exercise to practice mindfulness and to practice being present, because that's what mindfulness is really, is to use these everyday activities that you already do. For example, brushing your teeth. So you could make a very nice mindfulness exercise out of brushing your teeth and really being present with how does the toothpaste actually taste? How does the toothbrush feel against my teeth, against my gum? And don't worry if you're now wondering if you've actually brushed your teeth this morning. Okay, this is normal because that is something that we normally don't. Are you looking at Ally McBeal here?
I am looking at Ally McBeal, but doing a very bad job of it, as you can all see. Forgive me.
No worries. So yeah, so if you're now wondering if you actually brushed your teeth this morning, I am, as I'm talking about it. You know, that's because it's obviously something that we do out of our subconscious mind. It's completely automated. It's a program that we do. And of course, the point is not to bring all these automated programs into our conscious mind. The idea is just to practice our mind to be present and to focus on just one thing. You know, having that first cup of coffee in the morning. How does it smell? How does it taste? How do I make it? And what's the benefit of this as well? We're teaching our brain to calm down and to be able to switch out of the stressful state. So I'm actually writing a book at the moment, and one of the chapters is creating pockets of happiness. And that's another great exercise to do. And again, Khaled, that's also an answer to your question, is to teach ourselves to get into our happy place. And we can do that just for 1 minute at a time in the beginning. So when I work with clients individually, this is the first task I give them. It's like set your alarm for at least 3 times a day. And when it goes off, you go into your happy place. So we can do that right now as a quick little exercise. So all I need you to do is just sit back, maybe close your eyes, and go back to that last time that you were really, really happy. That last memory that you have of being really, really happy. And really bring that situation up. Think about the colors. Think about the sounds. Think about the feelings. And then feel that sensation of happiness in your body. And if you can, try to allocate it. Where in your body is that feeling of happiness? And see if there's a color. It's okay if there isn't, but maybe you have a color with that as well. Maybe you have a hand gesture. Maybe you have a sound. And that's it. And you can open your eyes. So in the beginning, when you do this exercise, you might actually have to bring that event back. But over a very short period of time, especially if it was easy for you to get the location and to get the color. So for me, it's the heart as well. So I have a warm yellow, bright orange kind of color here. So, you know, with a little bit of practice, all you got to do is just think heart, yellow, orange, warm, feeling it, done, happy. And why do we want to do that? Because again, coming back to that happiness frequency, we forget how to be happy, and we go through our day stressed, right? And now it's extremely difficult for our whole physiological and mental system to actually calm down. So by creating these pockets of happiness and by practicing this exercise, you're allowing yourself to step more and more often into a state of balance, into that right happiness frequency. And then, of course, over time, this will affect, and when I say over time, it's a short period of time, by the way. Over time, it will affect how you feel over or throughout the whole day. And you will actually use this technique so many more times than just the 3 times that you programmed yourself for in the beginning. In the beginning, it's a practice. Yeah, you need to be able to create that feeling. But then you will automatically use it before you go into stressful situations. You know you're about to go to be stressed potentially. So you're kind of building that barrier by just creating your happy frequency, finding yourself in that spot and that getting into that stressful situation. You will use it to calm yourself down. You will use it to rebalance yourself. So this is always the best way, because we tend to have a lot of pressure on ourselves to change our lifestyle. Now, here's the thing with change. Change is possible, but it's very, very difficult. So think about it that way. If we're always putting our energy into a certain thought process, it's like a train, okay? And the train is on a set of rails. So if you're on the stress train and all your thoughts are the energy for that stress train, you're going to go to stress station because your train is on rails. Like you can't, so again, you can change it, but it's very, very difficult. What's easier is to actually go onto a different train. So the stress train is still there, but you're just choosing a different train. So, and this is what we do with the pockets of happiness. Yeah. So this is a different train. It's a shorter train in the beginning because you need to practice it. So for just a short moment, you're fueling that train and you're going to happiness station. You're going to relaxed happiness station rather than to stress station. Because again, rather than changing our behaviors, why not just implement and start new behaviors? The more often you think, the more often you feel these new thoughts, the more you strengthen the neurological pathways in your brain. Because this is one thing that we know. The more often we think about an issue, the more often we feel it, the more it becomes part of who we are. Initially, you might tell someone, oh, I'm in a bad mood. Over time, it becomes part of your character. And you can go through your whole life retelling stories from your past. If somebody asks you, how are you? And something happened to you in the morning, you're going to tell me that story. Well, guess what? That event has already passed. So you're telling me a story from this morning, and you're letting that define how you are right now. That is a choice that you can make. Is this event still affecting you, or is it not still affecting you? Are you going to be defined by what's happening to you? And this is what I meant earlier by we are reacting to events rather than being proactive. So we need to learn. Sorry.
Can I just, sorry, again, I sound a bit like a scratch record here, but I've just learned last few weeks, I've been really practicing. There's a great philosopher called Viktor Frankl, and he was persecuted, tortured by the Nazis during the Second World War. It's very interesting. And I've been reading a lot about him in the last few weeks. And one of the quite profound things that he wrote, and I've read, and I've just really tried to embrace it in the last 3 or 4 weeks, is just that idea. And I've kind of gone on about stimulus response for maybe 20 years, but actually it was the first time I really understood it. And when I've read Frankl's words about this, it's so fascinating, because he said that, if you imagine him as a human being was experienced a lot of stimulus. I mean, people were being murdered and treated abysmally and terribly, and he was being taught very bad things and seen very bad things. But he said the one thing that those bad people couldn't do to him was basically manage his response to that. They could definitely stimulate him. So I think that's a really for me. And a couple of weeks ago, this lady sort of cut me up in a traffic light and caused me all sorts of stress. But I immediately just kind of went back to that kind of quote where she was clearly stimulating me and causing me all sorts of stress. But I kind of I thought, you can stimulate me 100%, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna choose my response to that. which I think is so important. It's been, yeah, I would say I would go as far as it actually quite significantly changed my kind of outlook on things, because I feel that I'm constantly we're all being stimulated, as you said, Tash. We're being tempted, stimulated by all these things around us. But actually, but we do have the ultimate choice, which is how we respond to that, right? Which is so amazing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's really, I had to come up with a very strong statement whenever someone annoys me, which of course happens, which is like, you are an insert, insert your favorite
Insert
expression.
the word of your choice.
Insert your word of choice. But I'm not giving you any power because you are such an I'm not going to let you ruin my day. I'm not going to give you that power because I don't care what you think anyway. So why would I, if I already dislike someone, if I already disagree with someone's behavior, why would I then let them have so much power over my life so that they can ruin the rest of my day, that they can ruin the rest of my daily experience? I refuse to do that. But of course that takes practice, and I'm not saying that never happens. Of course, initially, I'm a very reactive person. Actually, I'm a very spontaneous person. I'm very impulsive in my emotional reactions as well. So that's definitely a big challenge for me to work on. But so that's why, I had to really come up with my own statements where I'm like, okay, I'm swearing at that person. And in my mind, I'm clearly telling them, you have no control over me. You're not going to ruin my day. So, yeah, that's just it. That's my autonomy. I stay in control.
Yeah, really, 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 really wise words. I think part of it is just recognizing that we are being stimulated, but when it was literally the first time I really kind of noticed it was when I had that sort of traffic incident last week or week before, and it was just just kind of really freaked me out. I was talking at a conference yesterday about this, and I sort of mentioned it then, which was quite interesting. But that whole piece where I just suddenly thought, actually, do you know what? I know this behaviour is really frustrating me and making me very angry, and I'm actually quite worried about the behaviour because there's cameras and I'm stuck in these traffic lights, and am I going to get banned from driving and all that kind of stuff, which was genuine fear as it was happening to me. But at the same time, I thought, okay, just put it together. How you manage your response to this. Manage your response to how you're feeling. So I could really, I could feel that stress and that frustration building up inside of me. But then I kind of thought, no, I'm not going to allow it. As you said, Tash, I'm not going to allow this person to spoil my day.
That's the thing. We have so much control, but we don't take it. We don't use it. We tend to, again, rather be in that reactive position. That comes to our nutrition. That's about our movement. That's about our mindset. We just react. So I just want to go back to something in the chat box.
Of course,
so Vicky, I love what you're saying about and that you're jealous of me. Exactly, you wish you'd be me, but you're not.
We're jealous of you, Vicky. We're jealous of you.
And someone said something earlier about people that are being depressed or have anxiety attacks, and if they actually spend too much time in a state of unhappiness. And yeah, so unfortunately that is true. So when it comes to depression is a chemical imbalance of the brain. So we don't have enough of our happiness hormones. Now, depression can occur due to physiological reasons. And it happened to me. I had a underactive thyroid, and it took quite some time to be diagnosed. But the symptoms that I had was depression. I was properly depressed. The thought that I had in my mind the whole time was, if this is my life, what's the point? I wasn't suicidal, but I was properly depressed. And it was very, very challenging for me because it came sudden. It wasn't really anything that matched my normal mindset. But it was just something that, I couldn't help and I didn't have any control over. So once my thyroid was regulated and balanced out again, the symptoms of the depression disappeared. So depression is always a chemical imbalance, a hormonal imbalance, or a neurotransmitter imbalance. It can appear through physiological symptoms through disease, through medication, through a variety of things. Or, of course, it can appear through trauma, through stress, long-standing untreated stress for sure. And but wherever it starts, if it starts in the body or in the mind, it will ultimately affect the other system as well. It doesn't go any other way. There is no possibility that you can be physiologically imbalanced for a long period of time without having mental symptoms, or that you are mentally unbalanced and you're not going to get physiological symptoms. And again, that was the reason why I asked these questions in the beginning. There was one question, how does stress affect you in terms of, we had one with stress and anxiety, and quite a lot of people actually went for that answer. Well, that is your panic attack in the making. And the thing is, we get addicted to our stress hormones for such a long time that we don't even notice our stress levels anymore. By the way, men are a little bit more prone, this is scientifically proven, it's not a sexist comment, but men are a little bit more prone to not notice the physiological symptoms of stress for longer periods of time. So which might be one of the reasons why a lot of men tend to overdo it for much longer until they really have that heart attack or the stroke. So again, that's something to just be mindful of, because if you're not feeling the symptoms, it doesn't mean that you couldn't notice them. Yeah. So if you're not sleeping well, that's a symptom. It might not affect you, so you might not feel stressed by it, And there's a good thing that I also always advise people to think about. It's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So just because you can live on 5 hours of sleep every night doesn't mean you should. Just because you can go by skipping meals and then having meals at night doesn't mean you should. Just because you can work 10 hours every day doesn't mean you should. There's a lot of things like that. Just because you can deal with all the toxicity that you're experiencing around you doesn't mean you should. So there's a lot of these kind of statements that we need to tell ourselves. So a lot of the symptoms we kind of normalize. Yeah. Oh, it's normal for people not to sleep well because we have kids and we have work and we have this and we have that. Oh, it's normal to gain a bit more weight when you're at that age. The amount of times that I hear, oh, it's normal to have back pain. Everybody has back pain. Just because everybody around you has doesn't mean it should be normal or it's a good thing. That's just the way our society is going. That doesn't mean it should be normalized. We're doing ourselves a disservice by normalizing all these kind of things. There's a saying that goes, most people don't even know how good their bodies are designed to feel. And there's a lot of truth in that. We shy away from that because everybody around us lives a certain way. So we just do the same thing without making conscious decisions. Don't mask your stress. Exactly.
It's one of the things we've really noticed here, because we have a thing called the MTQ, which I'm not sure whether we've ever, I'm not sure whether Tash and I have spoken about it, but it's called the mental toughness quotient. And the authors of MTQ, it's basically Doug and Peter, they're two professors. But one of the challenges that they really talk about is that, we talk about sort of mental toughness and resilience, but actually it's not particularly healthy to be that tough and that mentally tough. We probably need to be, as you said, Tash, it's, definitely the, men tend to be much weaker at it. And unfortunately, as they said, not me, it's not my words, as they said, if you see yourself as very tough and hard and, very masculine, what tends to happen is that suddenly it just snaps. So you're not really aware of that kind of deterioration of your sort of mental health, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, I'll come to that in a short time. Let me check the time. I'm running out of time. Okay.
Time flies when we're chatting, Tash. It's almost we've almost run out of time. But anyway, keep going. There's a couple of things I'd like to ask you as well. But
yeah, I think we can always talk forever. We already know that. So last time I was in the office, I think it was almost 2 hours.
I agree, Tash. Particularly with someone who's so clever. Yes.
So I wanted to go back to the gut being the second brain. So again, as I said, I'm just writing on my book, and so I'm researching a lot more into different areas that I find so interesting. So research has found, so here it goes, that a lot of the information that travels around the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the main nerve that we have that travels all the way from the brain down through our spine and basically connects our system. Yeah, so it connects our brain with our gut, with our intestines. And 90% of the information that travels around the vagus nerves, which is responsible to trigger, for example, our stress responses, our fight or flight responses, travels from the gut to the brain and not vice versa. So this is a quite recent discovery, meaning that we don't recognize stress in our upstairs brain, but in our downstairs brain, in the gut. So this is where stress is noted, yeah, and noticed by the body. So I thought it was so interesting because that just really tells us how intense this connection is between the gut and the brain. And yeah, this is one of the reasons the gut is also called the second brain. There's quite a few reasons, but still, since we're running out of time, I need to be mindful of that. But just a few more gut facts that I love. 70% of the immune system is actually located in the gut, not anywhere else in the body. So a healthy gut bacteria means a healthy immune system. And also 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So serotonin is our happy hormone. So again, coming back to depression, for example, lack of serotonin availability in the body is a cause for depression. So most modern antidepressants actually increase the serotonin availability. So they work on our serotonin levels. There's a few different ones as well, but that's the most commonly, like if you get antidepressants, that's the first one you'll normally be tried on, because most people will respond to that well. So again, and that's in our gut, right? So taking care of our gut bacteria through the nutrition, making sure you're eating a well-balanced nutrition will again affect your mental health as well, not just your physical health. Sorry, I'm just reading.
I'm just conscious of time, so I've got about 6 minutes to go.
Okay, we have one last poll question.
Go on.
And
Go on.
then I explain something.
Hit us with the last poll question. Go on.
Exactly. Healthy gut, healthy mind. Well, healthy gut, healthy body, healthy mind. Everything healthy. So here's the question. Do you remember the last situation when you, a friend, a coworker just lost it? Became irrational, overreacted, in the car, someone else. Let's see if somebody answers C. And then I'm going to explain to you why that is. Why you might lose it. Because it's something that you just mentioned. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a strong A. Yeah, me too. Yesterday, actually. So someone triggered me. Okay, so why is that? So when we're in a constant state of stress, I'm going to rush now. We have this part in our brain, which is called the amygdala. The amygdala is the center in the brain that recognizes stress. And in an ideal world, if we were coherent, if we are somewhat balanced, our prefrontal cortex, which is the more logical part of the brain that's located in the frontal lobe, should regulate the amygdala. So either decide, okay, this is a valid reason to now lose it, or it is not. But what happens very often is because we're in such a constant state of stress, it comes to amygdala hijack. So an amygdala hijack is when the amygdala just runs with it and we lose it. We can't think about it. And often we hear people say, I can't remember what I said. We are in an argument and we don't even quite remember. And later on, the other person says, do you remember that you actually said that? You actually insulted me in that way. So that's an amygdala hijack. And again, so just to summarize it really quickly, how we can prevent it is coming back to the pockets of happiness. Yeah, so creating pockets of happiness for ourselves. That's your first aid, basically. Your first aid for your happiness frequency is to get yourself into that state of mind at random times, not when you're in the midst of a stressful situation, but when you can actually practice it. It doesn't take long, 1 minute max, and you're good to go. But you've just rebalanced yourself, at least for that moment. And yeah, I
Super.
think I'm gonna
Tash,
conclude.
if you want to read more about obviously your book, I'm not sure whether you've you published your book yet, but we'll obviously be
Nope,
buying that.
still writing.
Still writing, yeah. But books you'd recommend for additional reading in this? Because we'd like to add them to our skill zone and get them out to
So I'm a huge fan of Joey Dispenza. So
Joey
there is a
Dispenza.
podcast on Joey Dispenza, which can I share with you after, and then
Yes,
you
of course,
can
we'll
put
push
it
it
in the
out to
WhatsApp
everyone
group.
listening. Yeah, that'd
So
be good,
he
yeah.
talks a lot about the power of the mind and of our thoughts and how we can, gain that control and be more present in the moment. But he does it from a very neuroscientific point of view, which I enjoy a lot. There's a few good resources for the gut being the second brain. So I'm just going to share some with you, if that's okay.
That'd be really, really good. Last question for me, and then we'll kind of we'll do a bit of a wrap up. So just from if I put you in my we have a world class time machine, Tash. If I took you back to meet your the 18-year-old Tash a couple of years ago, only a couple of years ago, what advice would you offer her?
Oh, that's such a tough question. Yeah, it's just to keep in mind that you're so much more in control than you think you are, and
Yes.
that you have so much more power, and to keep creating. Now I talk about having my own queendom in my case, so I'm the ruler of my queendom. And I could have needed that when I was 18 for sure.
That is incredibly wise words. Really, really, really good. Just from me, I just wanted next week we have another guest. Obviously, it's our 143rd session. So we have Moon next week. I've known Moon for probably the best part of 25 years. Moon is currently the head of learning for Jamira Group or Burj Al Arab. So and he just spends a lot of time with Burj Al Arab. We're talking about leadership. Next week is also, if you're aware, International Leadership Week. Which is sponsored by the ILM and the CMI, two organisations that underpin the learning content for Etihad Aviation Group. So all of our learning content is endorsed by those guys, and as part of that, we're kind of partnering with them, doing some additional sessions next week. So we have 4, including the World Class Wednesday, which will focus on teams and leadership with Moon. We actually have sort of 3 other sessions we're going to do as well. We're going to do a session around coaching and asking questions and creating those questions, having conversations. That's on Monday, 20th. And then 21st, we're going to talk about accountability and have an hour kind of debate around that, which I think will be fascinating. And then obviously Wednesday we'll have Moon, and we'll talk about leadership development, and we'll talk about teams and guest service at Burj Al Arab, which will be fantastic. And then on Thursday we're going to talk about impact and communicating with impact and real presence, to use one of Tash's words earlier. So just a few thank yous from me as usual. So of course, first thank you to the incredible Tash. Tash, it's just been fantastic listening to you today. Thank you very much, and particularly being brave and testing the technology. Massive thank you to Kate Parkin at Hugo as well, who has sat quietly and patiently in the background. Particularly dealing with someone like me, Kate, I'm quite a challenging person to deal with, so I'm incredibly grateful for that. Alam, thank you very much for your usual participation, much appreciated. The audience, sorry we forced you into a slightly traumatic sort of like joining process, but you've managed to navigate it, which is fantastic. So really, really, really grateful for that. So again, everyone who listens to us, we will of course post a recording of this into our skill zone with the other 141 episodes of the World Class Wednesday sort of podcast. It's been amazing listening to you. You very soon. We need to talk more about those horses. I want to go and do that horsey thing with you.
Yes, please.
Superb. Thanks, guys. Have a nice afternoon. Stay safe out there. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today.
F1. Take care.